We do. That's why I have it here so I can remember what's
We
in
got the
there.
Albanian talking in the background.
Yep.
I'm sure everyone's going to be like, is that the Albanian back?
Albania is back from his overseas tour.
I was surprised that you allowed him to come back, too.
Well, the Russian was definitely a lot more fun. Not as tech savvy, though. That's the hard part.
I hear you. Well, let's get going here with our episode talking about the draft, all right?
Let's do it.
Welcome back for another episode of 217 South Mills.
Brought to you by Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane in Altoona, Wisconsin, and also brought to you by Pizza Del Rey.
Our favorite pizza place.
Yes, it is.
In Wisconsin. Let's start off with the Packers. That's obviously what everybody wants to hear about. That's really all we care about here in Wisconsin. The first round pick. I don't know, Joe. I don't know. We watched a couple highlights on him. It was tough to find a highlight where I thought he was a first round draft pick.
You know, honestly, for us playing offensive line at the level we played at, and you going to the NFL, you've been around some really stellar, and I've been around some really stellar tackles and offensive
We've been around
linemen.
first rounders.
Absolutely. And I had a hard time watching the highlight film, and I had a hard time finding highlights, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, we saw just as many highlights of him getting bull rushed, giving up sacks, giving up pressures. Now, granted, the highlights that the Packers put out were the best that they had.
Right.
So those were what we would consider an average or good play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not a stellar, not an A+, not a, boy, he drilled somebody, knocked him down, got another block, or, man, he locked that guy stone cold at the line of scrimmage. They were just a couple good pass sets.
I almost thought, you know, and of course, the one thing that we have going for us that other people don't is we know technique across the offensive line. Like, that's what we were drilled our entire college career on, was technique by Coach Huber. So that's the one thing we saw. And I noticed on his pass sets, hands are always outside.
100%.
Can't let the guy get into you. Your hands cannot be outside the shoulder pads. One, you call for holding. Number two, you have no leverage.
Yeah, so, and we understand that. My take, I noticed the hands as well as you did, but I also was upset with him playing high. And that was another thing we were always taught, and every lineman's taught. If you want to be successful, no matter how big you are, how strong you are, you have to play with a low base, low center of gravity. You have to get those knees to bend to get low. You got to be lower than the other guy, no matter how tall or short you are. If you're standing up, you don't have as much leverage. And those two signs, I really want to go as far to say, if he, and I feel like an NFL line coach should have the ability to correct him, but if he can't get that corrected, I don't know if he's going to be on the Packer roster, let alone it maybe not for too long, I'd say, at the very least. But yeah, and especially with the rookie cap, the way it is, it's not like we gave this first rounder $7-8 million where it's affecting the cap. His signing bonus is $765,000. Mm-hmm. If they cut him day one, that's all that affects the cap, and that will get spread out, I think, over 4 years, the $765. So it's not really that big of a loss. The biggest loss is the loss of a first-round draft pick.
Yep. You know, and we're trying to, especially if Jordan Love, who has 1 year under his belt, did a great job for us last year. You need to protect that backside 100%. There's no way that he's going to be able to feel comfortable in the pocket, be able to learn what he needs to learn if he's constantly hearing footsteps and running for his life. The one thing I too noticed about him was doesn't seem to have that prick mode that we talk about.
Absolutely.
He seems soft.
He's not dirty. He's not aggressive. Hard type of dirty.
Yeah. I mean, dirty in the rules of the game.
Yep.
Yes. 3 or 4 steps and not going through the whistle.
Yeah.
We watched him walk. We watched probably 20-some minutes of highlights on this guy, and we watched him walk. Meanwhile, he's on the backside, and his guy is running. The guy that he is responsible for is running across the field and making the tackle across field, and he's walking behind. Like, I had a hard time watching it, and I think you hit the nail on the head. First-round draft pick, I'm not seeing it.
Absolutely. And he's coming off a ACL injury from the year before. Yes. So it's like, did we sort of draft another Bakhtiari? Like, you never want to say that, but is this guy going to be injury prone? He's definitely not going to be a starter in year one. Like, I mean, here's my deal. If he's a starter in year one, and I apologize, I don't know the name of the O-line coach right now with the Packers, but if he starts year one, that Packer O-line coach should get at least an OC job the next year, if not a head coaching job offer the next year, because that is a miracle that he will have done. I'm not trying to rip on the Packers, neither one of us are, but it's just stating the obvious. And the Packer organization, they have to have that smile on, especially Gutierrez, because Packer GMs have not had the best of luck with drafts. I don't know. It's just they tried to put on this happy face, tried to say like everything's great, everything's rosy, and boy, oh boy, like after looking at that, that really scared me for the way the rest of the draft was going to go. Now, before we get to the rest of the draft, one of the highlights, hopefully we're going to drop this video right after we talk about this, but Pat McAfee on his show, they had his whole staff out there with Bill Belichick, which that blows my mind. I think it even blew Pat McAfee's mind that he got Bill Belichick to agree to do that show. But they had one of Pat's staffers that looked like Mel Kiper up there talking about the Packer pick before they picked him. And Cooper DeShawn, Iowa's white chocolate, was on the board. Yes, he's a white chocolate. It's been 22 years. He's going to have the name white chocolate during preseason. He was on the board, although we didn't need a cornerback. Me and you talked. We looked it up. I think it was 7 or 8 offensive linemen, one from Georgia, I think 2 from Alabama, got drafted ahead of Jordan Morgan.
Right.
Why can we never trade up in the draft? The Packers always trade down. And I understand it's a business. I'm not a GM, but I don't know. If somebody's got the answer, let me know, but I don't think this was the answer.
And I think what's frustrating is, if we are going to pretend to play for championships in Green Bay, and that is the expectation, not to just be mediocre. We've had great quarterbacks here, and hopefully going to continue with that legacy with Jordan Love. Our offensive line has been good. You're right. Why aren't we going after the pedigrees from Alabama, from Georgia, the tackles that you're hoping to build a foundation upon and have them be there for the next 10 years? Almost have another Joe Thomas.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really what you're looking for.
And Joe, me and you both know, especially with a young quarterback, as you said, how good our O-line is getting. Because our O-line wasn't that good for a couple of years. Right. They were really good in the early 2010s. But now they're really starting to piece it together. We got guys getting a little bit of experience. And then look at our backfield with our running backs. That is blowing my mind that they have such a good, yes, we don't have a Jonathan Taylor or somebody like that in the back, but we have, I think, at least 4 stellar running backs. All that's going to do is take pressure off of Jordan Love. But you got to protect, like me and you both know. You don't protect, you're not going to have that running game. But you finally have the backs that could actually run, which we haven't had for a while. Yes, we've had Aaron Jones, and we've had a couple good running backs. But at the time of those good running backs, we didn't have a good O-line. Right. And they had to make plays. They had to make miracles happen. The O-line's getting better. You got the running backs in the backfield. Why take a chance on this guy?
I was wondering the same thing. Just the proof is me watching, because we can sit here and watch film and pick out he's too low. I'm not sure if you noticed this, but too, even as a tackle, his kick slide, his first step, not getting ground. If you have outside wide 9, he's not getting back far enough, and then he's out of position, so he's too high, and immediately goes to the bull rush. And we watched him get pushed back into the quarterback several times, or get beat, or he oversets. And the guy's beating him inside. Your highlight tape should not have sacks.
Exactly.
Should not have sacks.
Exactly. Sacks or holding. And how many plays did we say easily could have or should have been a holding? I think another thing, as you said, the proof's in the video, the proof's in the highlights. I think there's going to probably be Packer fans listening to this being like, oh, they're just dogging on them. They're just ripping on the Packers. Here's my thing. We started watching the highlights again going, all right, let's stop talking about the negative. Let's wait for that one highlight. There was no one highlight. We have highlights of, I think, the next 2 guys we're going to talk about, that those highlights look like they could have been potentially first-round draft picks. Our Jordan Morgan, I didn't see one highlight that I'm like, oh, if the next 10 highlights are like this, he's definitely a first-rounder. There was no rogue grader. There was no lockdown pass setter. We just didn't see that one play. And you would expect to see a half a season or a whole season of those plays if you're a first rounder.
And to go back to us ripping on, okay, here's the deal. I'm not saying I have the right to, but I feel like I've earned it through playing at Wisconsin to know what a really good offensive line is. You were on the line. Yeah. You played in there. We at least know what we're looking for. It's not just they did a great job. From what I saw, not impressed. How about getting split on a combo block? That's our bread and butter at
Absolutely.
Wisconsin.
Yep.
We saw him get split on a combo block, and his guy came through, made the tackle, and I was in disbelief. I couldn't even believe it.
And another thing to talk about it, and I'm just prefacing this because we did start the show off with a lot of negativity about him. But here's the thing: the reason people like this show is they want to hear our opinions, and the reason I feel willing to say my opinion when it comes to football is, to your point, we know football.
Yes.
We're not experienced with football because we watched games for 25 years. Right. We're experienced because we played for as long as we played, and we got coached the same way over and over and over and over again. So that's our opinion on Jordan Morgan. You know, I wish him the best. I hope he does well. But I think this is the true example on why they switched the rookie cap, where if he doesn't pan out, I think he's going to be out the door really quick because it's not going to cost the Packers as much today as it would have the year before the rookie cap was put in place. And hopefully he changes it. Hopefully they coach him up. You know, there's other linemen there that are going to work with him too.
And I think it's super important to say, I'm not here to rip on college athletes. I already said this on the show. I respect any college athlete that committed themselves to playing a sport. I'm not just saying football. Any sport, if you are a Division I football player, or if you're a Division III, or I don't care if you're on the road team, you committed yourself. You have sweat equity, time, effort, pain. You've done it. So I have nothing but respect for any college athlete anywhere. Don't care.
Absolutely.
So this is not a rip session
exactly. And here's the thing: if he doesn't pan out, it's not on him.
Right.
It's more ripping on the Packers. It's more ripping on their decision making on why did you allow all these when you knew, because they had a couple ideas like if this guy's available or that guy, but if you know you just lost your star, your best left tackle for the last 10 years, I believe, you just lost him, you pretty much have a 95% chance there's no reason we're not taking a tackle. Why not go with one of the first 8 above him?
I agree.
You know, it blows my mind. I would have gone to the top, but if you say, oh, that's too much to trade up that high, to me it was worth it.
I agree. All right, so let's talk about the one guy I really liked. Actually, 2 guys. We can talk about the number 2, Edgerrin Cooper. We watched his highlights also. Guy's got a motor.
Yep, linebacker out of Texas A&M. Yeah, he is all over the field.
All the time. His instincts on the play, you can tell that he knows, he studies film. His reaction to plays that aren't set up there, and he's drilling guys coming out of the backfield. He's just got a motor, and I think that was a tremendous pickup. I really do.
He's a ball hawk. I think I've heard some people say he needs to work on coverage or size, but all the highlights we watched, he was covering well. Yep. He was on top of it. The guy hits hard. The guy just has a nose for where the ball's going, and he goes north and south. He doesn't make the tackle falling backwards. He always makes the tackle falling forwards. Like whenever I've worked with youth football players, that's what I always say. Like, don't stop your feet on the hit. You got to drive through and deliver the tackle. Correct. Don't accept the tackle. And yeah, that was huge with watching him.
Good.
The next second rounder was Javon Bullard, safety out of Georgia. Man, the first highlight I saw this kid out of all of them, it was before you and I started watching highlights together on him. I saw one on social media, and he reminded me of our teammate Jason Doring.
Yep. That
would just knock your lights out. He came from safety and just drilled the guy. And going back to where we started early on, these guys, every play in the highlights, it was like, wow, this guy's a player. Wow, he could. And almost the opposite, we're seeing great plays and we couldn't find negatives.
Correct. Now, obviously, it's a highlight tape, but again, you're supposed to highlight your accomplishments and your plays, not giving up sacks and getting blown up on a double team. I'm just saying. Anyway, but yeah, he was a missile. He flew and no hesitation and put his nose in there for the big hits, and I was impressed, and I'm not usually impressed by safeties, but that guy was lights out. So absolutely. I think that was a heck of a pickup.
I think another guy we looked at when we were watching scouting tape was a third rounder, Marshawn Lloyd, right? Didn't we watch him? He was the guy. We really liked him, running back out of USC. Yep. We liked him. We heard that there's a little bit of fumbleitis in his background.
Yep.
But boy, when he runs, he's another game breaker, game changer. Has that burst of speed. Guys can't catch him from behind. So
Shifty.
yeah.
But again, fumbling the ball is not an option.
True.
I mean,
that needs to stop.
That
yesterday.
is such a killer for the offense for a drive, and you won't last long.
Yep.
I mean,
and the funny thing, going back to our era, where Ron Dane came out of Wisconsin the year before we got done, he went to New York. And when the reason the Giants drafted him, they had Tiki Barber, and Tiki had fumbleitis.
Oh.
And I think Ron, all of us, and the whole country, especially every New York Giants fan, thought Ron Dane was going to be getting the ball 40 times a game, just like at Wisconsin, knocking guys down, working his way downfield, busting a couple big runs. And all of a sudden, the joke between Wisconsin guys and Ron was, did Tiki Barber put super glue on his forearms for every game? Because when Ron got there, I don't know if Tiki fumbled the ball another time while Ron's tenure went in New York. So
maybe you hold the ball a little tighter when you know your job's on the line. I mean,
I don't know. Don't carry it like a loaf of bread, like Coach B. White used to say.
Absolutely.
Don't have a loaf of bread out there. So after that, we didn't look too much at later on in the draft. You know who we did look at?
Yes.
I was going to say, adding a linebacker with Tyron Hopper from Missouri. We got another safety, which is good. Getting more defensive guys. Another safety, Kitlin Oladapu. Thank you. From Oregon State. Another safety, good guy for defense. Yep. Here's another problem we ran into. Round 6, with the 202nd overall pick in the draft, we draft Travis Glover, offensive tackle out of Georgia State. This was difficult to watch.
And here's the thing. Good sized guy. This was my 6'6", 323. Yep. That was my playing weight.
Yeah.
Give or take pounds, but that's kind of where I was at when I played. And hard to watch. Not a motor, stood up, played tall. Again, didn't have the finishing blocks that you look for. Kind of that pissed off edge that you get where you put a guy to the ground. I didn't see a finish. I did not.
I just want to read wherever we got this info. I think it was maybe from the Packer website, but it was like sort of their take, whoever the scout is, their take on Travis. Stop if you heard this before. The Packers took another versatile lineman who has lined up at multiple positions. That's huge. Guy that could play multiple spots. Yep. Glover played both tackle spots and left guard in college. He's considered to have an upside, considering, as Joe said, he's 6'6", 323. I'll tell you, there were times when we were watching film, you looked at each other and go, are these high school highlights? Yeah, and then I remember saying, you know what, Joe, maybe this is his freshman year, and he was a 4-year starter, and we're just watching we're watching highlights only of his freshman year, which obviously everybody makes mistakes. But then we get to the Senior Bowl.
Oh, the Senior Bowl, yes.
Senior Bowl.
Where it highlights your craft, your skills, and your ability and your accomplishments.
Yeah. He, in the Senior Bowl, now granted, you're playing against, let's say everybody's 22. You're 22 years old playing against the best 22-year-olds in the country, if not the world. And he looked like, I think we've had third-team tackles at Wisconsin that would have played better in the Senior Bowl than he played. I don't know, maybe he was sick, maybe he was injured, but that when you go to those bowl games, especially the Senior Bowl, like I played in the Hula Bowl. Scouts are there for one day. The Senior Bowl, scouts, reporters, coaches, they are there every single day, every single practice, watching everything. Granted, we just saw a couple highlights from that game, but man, we didn't see anything.
But the highlights are what you need. And maybe it's because you went to a smaller school, Oregon State, but we watched the was Oregon State, right? Yeah, Oregon State.
No, Georgia State.
Oh,
Georgia
sorry.
State. Yeah.
Sorry. Georgia State.
You almost had me because I saw OT and then we started.
Gotcha. Georgia State, and then the Michigan guy was just lighting them up.
Yeah. And that could be, and I think a lot of that too is the difference where, look at Jordan Morgan, Arizona. I mean, I played with Kevin Berry that was out of, Kevin's going to kill me if I get this wrong. Yeah, he was Arizona. My other buddy, Gray Rugemer, was Arizona State. Not saying that's bad, but are they in the best conference today? Like, obviously, the SEC has been huge. The Big Ten just won the national championship, going 15-0. We proved our top teams could beat all the other top teams in the country.
Correct.
I just think when you don't come from those top conferences, what you see on tape, if you're not destroying people on tape, if you're losing to people, and you're not from a top conference, that says a lot negatively about you.
So we have a brand new drink coming to Cabin Coffee starting in May, which is, what, 2 days from now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I'm trying to do the head
Yeah,
count.
but you know what? It's going to be the day this episode no, it'll be the day after this episode
Well,
airs.
which one is it, yes or no? Because I'm still trying to.
Let's say yes for your answer, and it'll be the day after the episode airs.
So this is we've been rotating the drink of the month, consistently since we've been open, and this is a brand new one that we haven't had before. It's called the Lavender Buzz. It's got lavender syrup in it, and it has our patented white coffee that talked about earlier. High caffeine, not that deep roasted and robust flavor. If you don't like the taste of coffee, give this a try. It's got a smoother, nuttier flavor. And we top it with a whipped cream and some honey, thus the buzz. The buzz from the caffeine or the buzz from the honey. You figure it out. So,
boy, I feel like your voice went like so baritone given that speech. It was like an audiobook.
Trying.
That drink sounds delicious.
It is. So I've tried it. It's really good. People like lavender. It's the way to go. Give it a try. If you're not from here, stop on by, drive over here. It's worth the trip.
That even rhymed.
There you go.
Sounds
perfect. So let me ask you this, Bill. You being in the NFL and being around players, etc. Have you had players or that were drafted that were high, and when they got to where you were playing, whether it was the Packers or the Panthers, or were you able to tell in a relatively short amount of time at practice?
Oh, absolutely.
During film that this guy is not going to make it.
Now, I know we talked about this a little before the show, and do you remember the name I said?
I don't.
No, I'm drawing a blank. I will put the name on the video. But we had a guy, or maybe I'll come up with it as I talk, out of Florida State. And the Packers took him with the 12th pick overall in the draft. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I was trying to think, I thought I had the name in my head. I don't. I remember in college, we said there was no social media, so you sort of saw what happened across the country on ESPN the night when you got done playing games. And I remember seeing him a little bit on highlights because he was getting sacks. But I remember going, who's he going against? He's not going against the Chris McIntosh. He's not going against the Joe Grabowski. He's not going against the Aaron Gibson. He's not going against those guys. But yeah, he looks spectacular. All of a sudden, day one of camp, when the pads went on and it was full go live, I remember Earl Dotson was the tackle at the time, and Earl was with the second string because at the time Tauscher took over at tackle. And Earl pass sets one step, punches him with his hands inside in his chest, and he did a backflip backwards. And we're all like, oh, damn. Because he was the 12th pick of the draft. I want to say, probably got $6-7 million to put his name on paper. And because this is before the rookie cap, had all those millions, and then had probably a $12-18 million contract with the 12th pick of the draft in 2001. But yeah, those things happen. Like we've heard about the bus. Me and you have talked about the Tony Mandrich.
Yep.
How the Packers passed on Chris
Sanders.
Chambers, Barry Sanders. The Packers passed on. Didn't they pass on Jonathan Walker too? Jonathan Taylor, I mean. From the Badgers. I think the Packers passed on him. So, I mean, there's always, they pass on good ones. There's always going to be draft busts. But, yeah, I mean, there are guys that walk in and everyone looks at them like, oh, they're the number whatever pick in the first round. And like me and you say, it doesn't mean shit till you get on the field.
Which is funny because here me and you are watching, and I hope we're wrong. I hope we're wrong about both these offensive linemen. I really do.
Yeah.
I hope that they pan out and they have a 15-year career,
and 10 Super Bowl
and they make me freaking eat crow
and
to say, hey,
yeah,
remember 217, laying into us? I hope I'm wrong. I really do.
Yep.
But if it's your job and you're running a multi-million-dollar team like the Packers, don't you have people that do this? Because me and you are just too...
Yeah, if we could watch a little bit of scout tape for like a half hour, and we're like, this guy's a bust.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not because we're not a fan, not because we watch a lot of football, because we understand the technique, we understand what it takes, and we especially understand what it takes to last, and more importantly, like you said before, the attitude. We understand that attitude, and we're able to see that attitude just in how your body moves, how you finish... like
going through the whistle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like your half-assed effort is on film.
Yeah.
Like You mean to tell me if we were dogging it or running after the play and not sprinting through the whistle, you don't think we were called on a film on that? Are you
Absolutely.
kidding me?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I almost wonder how he didn't get questioned more at the combines.
Right.
Because a guy like that I think he was projected on mock drafts in the mid 30s.
Right.
Like 34 to 38 was where a lot of mock drafts predicted him to get picked. So that's a second rounder.
Right.
So if you're projected as a second rounder, how are coaches not asking him, hey, in this game we saw you walking a lot. Hey, in this game we saw you give up 4 pressures, a sack, and probably 8 plays that looked like you were holding. Hey, why do you play with your hands outside? Like, did they ask those questions, or did they ask those questions and they got an answer that they were satisfied with?
Okay.
I don't know, but it's.
So let me ask you this, because I don't even know this question. Do you think the coaches can see like your tools that you have, and they think that they can coach you into the player they need you to be at the NFL level? I know at Wisconsin that was a thing, because we brought in 3 and 4 stars all day long and turned them into really
and we brought in guys that like we didn't have stars back then, but we're saying if we did, we also brought in guys that were 5 stars.
Yep.
That were a pile of shit. But the coaches looked at it and were like, he's got the size, he's got the wingspan, he's got the speed, he's got the strength, but look, what does it look like? Tarzan played like Jane.
Yep.
And I don't know at the NFL level. Like, wait, I don't know.
When you're putting that much money on the line, you wouldn't think you would leave it up to either you have it or you don't. That's just my.
But at the same time, too, I keep going back to, am I the idiot or are they the idiot? Because I know, but my point is, if I look at it and me and you understand technique, and me and you have this conversation, but we're not GMs. No. Like, what is the conversation in that war room being like, well, his tape looks shitty, I know, but we could still make him into a 10-year or 8-year Pro Bowler, and he's going to help us get to the Super Bowl. Is that what they're saying, or are they just convincing themselves? Does Gutekunst have a bunch of yes men around him? I hope he doesn't. But, yeah, it's it's challenging, it's tough, but, yeah, I don't know. Like we said, we hope this whole draft class pans out huge, but we'll see what happens.
Because again, we are a fan. Like, that's the thing.
Absolutely.
Like,
and the nice thing too is, like, once preseason starts, we'll be able to start talking about them in these podcasts. And seeing the plays, seeing how they're, and especially with those 2 tackles, we're going to be able to tell right away in preseason have they made improvement. Because by the time you have your first preseason game, you're in week 3 of preseason camp. You've already gone through OTAs. I don't know if they still have mini. I do think they have at least one mini camp, but you got OTAs, which are basically smaller segmented practices throughout the off season. And those guys were, when I played, you were not required. The whole team was not required to stay in that city and show up at the facility every day. Okay. Certain guys, like me as a young guy, knowing I was a backup, trying to earn a starting job, I was there every single day, lifting, running, training, watching film. Nowadays, everybody on the roster, I think, before camp starts, they have 80, 85 guys on the roster. They have to cut it down to 53. They might even have 90 to start with. All 90 of those guys have to be in town, have to be in the facility every day, have to work out every day. So there's a lot of time that is devoted to them to have coaches make them better. We'll see come preseason, because you got a first rounder. When you draft a first rounder, I think you're expecting them to start. There are a lot of people saying he's going to be left tackle. A lot of people saying he's going to be right guard. Maybe they do realize he's not a tackle, but we can make him into a good guard. And that happens a lot within football, where I've seen in Green Bay, Mike Wall, who was one of my teammates in Green Bay, was a horrible, I think they had him at left tackle, horrible left tackle, and they were about to cut him. They put him at left guard. Guy ends up becoming a Pro Bowl left guard. His last contract, I think, was $25 million. Nice. And he was about to be done in the NFL as a tackle. Mm-hmm. So that happens too. Right. And hopefully something like that will happen, but we'll have that opportunity to talk about it come preseason with the Packers.
Gotcha. I don't know if you want to touch on where some of our Badgers went. That would be a nice little thing to see where they gone. Of course, first up was 4th round draft pick by another Italian.
Tanner
Bortolini. There you
I
go.
love him. I'm going to be rooting him on. I have to
Absolutely.
get one of his jerseys. Yeah, he got drafted in the 4th round to the Indianapolis Colts. Center. It's been a pleasure watching him. I think I do think he's a really good center. Reminds me a lot of Tyler
Biotic.
That's who he reminds me a lot of at the center position. So, yeah, I mean, I hope he's going to do really well. And one of the exciting things where we did see Badgers come off the board, the disappointing thing was we didn't see as many as the Badgers are used to. And I think that's something, that obviously recruiting's changing, the playoffs are changing, and especially NIL, and hopefully Wisconsin could keep up with that run. But we did have 2 guys taken as draft picks, and the second one was also a 4th-round draft pick. And this was one that I think a lot of Badger fans were probably stressing about for a long time. And in the 4th round, the New York Jets took Braylon Allen.
Yep. And, he's still young. Was he 20 years old?
I think he got drafted as a 20-year-old. As a 20-year-old.
Like,
insane.
And he has the tools. We've seen the tools. Whether they can utilize him the way they need to. But this could be potential, like, a really good back for a really long time because he's so young, So, obviously, anytime the Badgers go to the NFL, you're rooting for them. So
Absolutely.
we pray that they make it and, of course, represent the university really well. And for a young man, don't know the guy, from what we hear, sounds like an outstanding human being. And,
that's what I was going to say. On and off the field, he just seems like a stand-up guy. And in my opinion, I think the reason – I was even surprised he dropped as low as he dropped. But I think the reason he did was he still was injured through the combines. He was still injured. He was better, but he was never 100% before the draft. And I think if he was 100% at some time, even the week before the draft, if he was truly 100%, where he could call the top 10 teams that are most interested in him and say, hey, I am 100%, and they come down and work him out, I think he could have been a late 2nd rounder or for sure a 3rd rounder. I don't think he would have dropped to the 4th round, but after watching that happen, I have to believe it's because of the injuries. But I agree with you. I think he's going to have a heck of a career. Now, granted, he needs to stay away from injuries. He needs to stay healthy. But I think if he could stay healthy, he will have a great NFL career.
Well, and I don't think the offensive line at Wisconsin did a stellar job promoting him last year. Let's face it. I was not impressed with the offensive line play last year. And again, I'm going to give that grace period. But we came from an era where we knew how to run the freaking ball. Absolutely. And that's what we did. And we did it very, very effectively.
And when you get a guy like Braylon Allen, he had a good year. But after we saw what he was able to do, we thought he was going to have a Heisman type of year.
Absolutely.
And that was not the case. But at the same time, too, you and I are seeing him get his first hit about a yard in the backfield.
Yep.
Where that's on the line.
Yeah.
You can't allow that to happen. You need to shore up that line, and you need to protect a guy like that. Like, he shouldn't be getting hit till he's at linebacker level, if not on a safety or a corner or something like that, where it's not as big of a hit. It's not, he sees it coming, where it's not from the side and being piled up. And that's what teams knew. If you're going to stop a Braylon Allen, similar to Ron Dane, you need to gang tackle that dude. You can't have one guy pull him down with a shoestring.
Yeah, so hopefully, like I said, I think if he would have played in our era, it would have been a different story.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He would have been.
Again, not trying to blow our own horn. Like,
I know.
I'm not here to brag, but holy crap, this is what we did. This is what we know.
Exactly.
This is it.
It's different. We've talked about generations with kids. It's a different generation.
Nope.
Just everything about football is different. It's just, it's two different generations. But the game has changed too.
Yep.
The game is 2 different games. The game we played versus the game today. I mean, you look at the game, we joke about it all the time. We had 63 plays in the game. We threw the ball 3 times.
Yep.
That's crazy to think. We had 60 run plays. And even my scouting report, I've looked at that online where it's like hell of a run blocker, is a beast, gets low, leverage, but doesn't pass block that much, so not sure. I mean, in a season I might have pass protected, I don't know, 20 sometimes.
Right,
but I ran the ball. I'm trying to do the math. I probably ran the ball like 600 times in a season. So no more than that. It's just astronomical.
Right.
But more than 600 times we ran the ball. So those were our 2 Badger draft picks. But then to address the guys that ended up getting picked up afterwards, the undrafted guys, we have Tanner Mordecai.
Yep. Who Niners.
I was a fan of with the Badgers. Went to San Francisco 49ers. And I don't know. I think I don't have a ton to say about it. You got Brock Purdy out there, but my one thing about Tanner that I think is a good situation with him in San Fran is Brock Purdy.
Yep.
He's not going to San Fran, in my opinion. If I was his agent, I'd be like, listen, we need to be smart with you. Because when you go undrafted now, that undrafted player has the right to pick any team. So if out of 32 teams in the NFL, say all 32 of them want you, you as a player get to pick which team you go to.
Okay.
So the picking reason could be determined on, well, this team's going to give me a higher signing bonus. Because most undrafted players don't get a signing bonus. They might get up to $15,000, $20,000, might get a $50,000 signing bonus. But it's either nothing or next to nothing.
Right.
So when you're making a decision, that decision is based on what's the depth chart look like, what's the chances of making the team. I believe, not knowing Tanner, not knowing even who his agent is, his agent said, go to San Fran, Brock Purdy, and that quarterback's coach is going to make you a better quarterback. And then when you get your chance to play in preseason games, because of being in that situation and within the realms of that team, you're going to put out better tape. And then when somebody needs a backup, you're going to have a better chance to get signed to an active roster.
I agree.
So that's my take with Tanner. I think we'll move down to. We'll try and pronounce his name because I feel bad. I feel bad not mentioning.
Went to the Bengals. He's a linebacker.
Mema Nagamenta. That's how I'm going to say it. We're going to get laughed at so bad for not knowing how to do this.
That's fine.
But yeah, a linebacker from Wisconsin. Wisconsin's become linebacker U over the years,
Yep.
And with what he did at Wisconsin, I think he's got a good chance to make a team. Now, a linebacker, you're not going to make the team. He's not making the team as a starting linebacker. He's making the team as a special teams guy.
Yep.
He's got to become the special teams coach's best friend,
Yep.
and he needs to live in that room, and he needs to take every snap available on special teams and become a starter on special teams.
Yeah, and make an impact when you have those opportunities,
Exactly.
and that's the thing. So,
Exactly.
And then how about this, huh? The long snappers.
Long
Had
snapper.
I known long snapper would have got me to the NFL, you better bet I would have had my head so far between my legs snapping that ball every day.
I bet our dads would have been telling us that.
Oh, absolutely.
Stop eating cheeseburgers, start long snapping.
I've told numerous people in the Eau Claire area when I was coaching, if you want to become a really good at something, be a long snapper. If you're a mediocre tight end or whatever you are, learn how to long snap.
Yep.
And a couple of those people took my thing, and they went on to play college. And we know two people that went on to the NFL for quite a while as long snappers.
Yeah, we had Mike Schneck,
Yep.
and we'll start with him. We had Mike Schneck, who was our long snapper for, I believe, our first 3 years playing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll tell the funny story. I forget what game it was. Minnesota, yeah. The reason Mike Schneck did not finish his senior year as the long snapper was after a game-winning field goal,
Yeah.
he started celebrating, fell down, dislocated his elbow.
I think he was in the bottom of the pile as they were celebrating, and I don't think you can see the dislocation, but it's he was done.
Yeah,
But
you could hear it. If you're on the field, you might not be able to see it, but you could hear it. But when Mike Schneck went out, we had Mike Sowald, who was basically, he came in as a very highly touted tight end, didn't really pan out for him as a tight end. He basically became a scout player tight end.
Yep.
A good teammate, good scout team player, but him himself, I think, even knew not going to see the field. Well, during that process of him knowing he's not going to see the field, he's like, well, maybe one chance I might be able to see the field is being a long snapper.
Yep.
It just so happens Mike Schneck dislocates his elbow. Who's the only other guy on the team that knows how to long snap?
Mike Sowald.
Mike Sowald. So Mike Sowald ends up long snapping for the rest of our career. And going from the beginning of our career to where Mike's career ended, Mike ended with a Super Bowl ring.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely. And I think he won the Super Bowl ring in Tampa. I'm not sure exactly how many years he got. I think he was on 2 different teams. But, yeah, if you go back to 96 and you say that guy is going to be in the NFL for multiple years and have a Super Bowl ring, you'd be like, I'm not sure what this football thing's all about.
So to all our young people who are listening to us who are playing football, if you want to diversify and make yourself more valuable to your colleges that you're applying to and potentially to the NFL, learn how to long snap. And there's some amazing camps out there for that specialty. And
I think it's a lot like anything in life. You have to practice it. Because I waited until I think it was my 3rd year in the NFL, and I go, like I was on the bubble basically every year. I'm being on the bubble meaning, are you going to get cut or make the team? And luckily enough, I got 3 years. But at one point, I was like, well, if I'm not going to get a chance to start, like I had in my head, when I played in games, I did really well. But when I was playing in preseason games with a second string or a third string, the communication's not there. It's not as easy. And I said, I need to learn how to long snap. Because I remember a good friend of mine, Frank Winters, started his NFL career as a long snapper. Okay. That's how he was a center that knew how to long snap. I think the first 4 years of his NFL career, he was just a long snapper until somebody, I think he came to Green Bay possibly as a center. Huh. But I tried long snapping. Punt, out of the question. Could not make the snap 15 yards. So they're like, all right, let's start with field goal, short snapping. I could either rainbow it, and short snap at the NFL level and college level, it's more important than high school. It's all about timing. Yep. It's like point however many seconds. If you're off by a tenth of a second, the snap is no good. You're going to give up a block. I would either rainbow like a 4.5 second snap, or it would go back like a bowling ball and it'd be a 7-second snap. So after a couple weeks of trying it, kickers finally like, you know what, you're just wasting our time. Just please give up. So my point is, if you're a young kid, start putting in the practice, start putting in the time. If that's something, even just have as a backup. Like if you're an offensive lineman, a tight end, D lineman, anything like that, and you want to have a better chance to get a scholarship or to see playing time or to get on the field earlier than you would. Like, think if you're a D lineman and you long snap and you start getting downfield making those tackles. Yeah. That might get you bumped up in at least the 2 deep roster on the defensive line.
And let's face it, it's not long snapping. It's not like it was back in the 80s. You don't get blown up. You don't get just killed. You don't get touched, which is great. But back in the day, being a long snapper,
once again, the game is different. And today, you get penalized if you touch the long snapper at any point. You can't touch his hands. You can't touch his shoulders. You can't. God forbid you touch his head. It might be a ejectable offense. But back in the day, they would line up not so much. They used to want to go a little bit off center of the long snapper, but they'd have a guy in the guard center gap. They'd have a guy head up on the guard. They'd have a guy in the guard tackle gap. Then they would have 3 either D linemen or linebackers pushing. Yep. And I remember I played Tampa once when Warren Sapp. It was the game that Chad Clifton, that Warren Sapp hit Chad Clifton and
that cheap shot.
Yep, and he broke his hip. I went in, and as soon as I went in on PAT field goal, all of a sudden Tampa changed their whole PAT field goal block, and they're like, boom, get on the left guard. And they had, I think it was 900. It was like over 1,200 pounds lined up on me because I had Warren Sapp head up on me. I forget the other two, the other D tackle, D end. Then there was a D end pushing on Sapp. So it was crazy, and then you get a long snapper trying to give you your left hand. It's like, yeah, you're really helping me out a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
And in that game, just to give the answer, I held Warren Sapp like crazy and just fell down and tried to just cause a hole. I knew I wasn't going to hold him up, but I figured at least if they don't get the block, it's not going to look pretty for me on tape, but you'll hold them up. Now, the downside of that is once you give up push, every team that you play against, they're going to go on you until you stop it on tape. Every team will line up on the same guy. Once you stop it, then they're like, all right, he figured out a way to hold up. Now let's move on to a different guy.
Gotcha.
And they just keep bouncing around until they find that. Absolutely. Find that weak link in the armor.
Absolutely.
I think the last guy on our paper that went undrafted was tight end, Hayden Rucci. Went to the Dolphins. And here's the thing with that. I think he's got possibility where Wisconsin, similar to we say about, or used to say about O-line, we say about linebackers, running backs, Wisconsin's been a tight end facility, pumping out tight ends. So
Jake Ferguson representing Wisconsin right now?
Yep, exactly, yes. So I think next we're going to talk about just mentioning some of the guys in the NFL from Wisconsin. And Jake Ferguson is a great guy to start off with. When we looked at this list, we didn't count. I wish they had it numbered just to make it simple for us, but I didn't take the time to count. But it had to be over 25 guys that are currently in the NFL that are Badgers. And yeah, there was times where we had more, but it's amazing. Me and you, and we could go back and forth. Like you said, Jake Ferguson. We got T.J. Watt,
Russell Wilson,
Leo Chanel.
Yep, who's doing great things with the Chiefs.
Absolutely. Jonathan Taylor, who's arguably the best running back in the NFL, held out to get his money, got paid. Good for him.
Yep.
We still got a ton of old linemen in the NFL. We got Ramczyk.
We talked about Tyler Biadasz earlier.
Biadasz.
Yeah.
Kevin Zietler, man.
He's been in the league for a long time.
I was just going to say, he's as long as Russell Wilson. He was an old lineman during the Russell Wilson years, I believe.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I think that old line, because that was also Joe Thomas. I think that was one of the highest paid O-linemen over their career out of any O-line in the NFL from college. So like that Badger O-line, when you look at Zietler, Joe Thomas, I forget the other guys from that year, but
was Gabe Creaney on there?
I think Gabe Creaney was on there, and Gabe was a first rounder to Chicago. But those guys over their NFL career got paid more than any other 5 group out of college. And well worth it, because they were deserving of it. And like we say, they played with that same attitude at the NFL level.
It's always good to have Badgers in the NFL. Good representation. Obviously, J.J. Watt just retired here, so which was a great ambassador for us also. Joe Thomas, a couple of years back, retired. So
Joe Thomas still pissing us off, losing all that weight and looking so thin and trim.
I hate guys who retire from football that like lose weight like nothing.
They don't have to wear black to look thin.
Well, I wear black because that's just my personality, so I wear black.
But, me too.
And then if I wear white, I start sweating and it's see through. And I'm in the matter
I know, but see, those guys after they lose like 120 pounds, they don't sweat.
Chris McIntosh lost a ton of weight. Aaron Gibson, I smell pizza and I gained 10 pounds.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
I look at a Pizza Del Rey logo for the show and my mouth starts watering.
And then I gain weight.
Exactly. Then I wear black again.
Absolutely. Well, I don't have anything else. I think that wraps it up.
That is going to wrap it up for the
draft
episode.
And all in all, just to recap, we're rooting for these guys to make it. I really do. It was our perception of what we saw on film, and we know film because we know technique because it was
watched
drilled
enough
into
of film,
us.
that's for sure.
We have. So
I think some of us watched more film than they did class. So
that would be you, Bill. That's not somebody. That's somebody. It was you.
I just said somebody.
I'm pointing it out. It was you. It was definitely 100% you.
I didn't point out you do wear black because you look thinner.
Well,
and you look surprisingly thinner.
What color are you wearing today?
You're colorblind. I'm wearing red today.
Oh, okay, sounds good. That's all the shots to the head. I don't know colors anymore. So.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in for another episode of 217 South Mills.
Take care, folks. And we also want to thank our sponsor from Cabin Coffee and Pizza Del Rey.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Joe and I today. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. If you like what you heard, please give 217 South Mills a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Go tell your friends about us. Like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube.
I'd like to thank Cabin Coffee Altoona for sponsoring us. Everything is always better at the cabin. See you next time. And remember, folks, Red has to run.